Here we go. Hi, Ray. Welcome. Nice to see familiar faces. So I invite you to give yourself the gift. We're in this gift of a new year, and I invite you to give the gift of full presence. And if you're anything like me, I'm one of those people that I'll listen while I do the dishes and vacuum and do all the things. And I really want to invite you to bring yourself onto the camera and to put everything else down if possible, and to really give yourself this gift. Because while I'm going to be sharing a bunch of things, I'm also going to be asking you a lot of questions about you, yourself, your own story, and your own journey. Oh, it's so good to see your faces. And I like to watch, I like to do this through gallery view. So you can have me just up there, but you could also do it on gallery view, because story is in its very nature a participatory, co-created experience. It is where our human technology comes in together, and our energy bodies literally touch each other, and somehow they draw out this mysterious being of story. And so I'm going to be talking about story from not your average perspective today. I'm going to be talking about it both as a sacred art, as a mystic practice, as a tool for healing, and as a conduit for bringing earth and spirit together through this extraordinary expression of being human. So welcome. I'm really delighted to get to journey with you and see what comes alive in our alchemy. And really things do come alive in different alchemy. So I invite you to place your feet on the earth, to close your eyes. And you might have just been like, wait, I put my foot on the floor, not on the earth. But that was actually like, I invite you to really think about what did you just place your feet on? And for me, it's on wood. And I'm asking you to connect. Maybe you're on rug, maybe you're in linoleum, to take a moment as you breathe into the bottom of your belly to really think about what was the original source of life that is holding you in this moment. And so as I consider this plank of wood that my feet is on, I know that it was originally from a tree who had roots deep into this earth, who had arms that spread out wide and caught the sun and the stardust and the light of day and the rain. And somehow this alchemical process created this aspect of life to grow and grow and grow until one day it was cut down. And it was handled by the hands of so many people who eventually brought it into another kind of shape, another kind of form, to now lay and rest and hold me as I come to you today. So that is the life that I am connected to, that is physically, literally holding me in this moment. And so I invite you into that own process, to breathe into what is holding you, what aspect of life is holding you right now. And as you breathe fully into that, exhaling out any part of the day that's ready to go. And you can just give your shoulders a little shake, exhaling all the way up, bring your belly button all the way back to the back of your spine, really exhaling out. This time, inhaling in all the life that is around you. In Hawaii, there's a word called mana. It means life. And it's as if every cell of your body could breathe in the mana that's in your space. You know, there's all kinds of energy coming forward. There's plants that are breathing that in. So if you can get a little extra jolt of energy just through the air as you open your cells to receive. And so this is an invitation to receive. And just exhaling out. This next breath, just breathing in again and really considering what brings you here. Why are you committing an hour of your life to this space? Is it that there are stories living in your bones that are knocking around, asking to come alive, begging or pleading to come out? Or they're just ready? Are you one of those people where the muse comes knocking and is kind of sparking you with inspiration all the time? And you're ready to start writing it down. Listen to that expression, as if writing something out of the other ethers and bringing it down to earth You're ready to write it down, to walk among us in the form of a story that can be told and shared? Or are you one of those people that is committed to being one of those very few among us, those that are going to carry the old stories to keep them alive and walking among us? I invite you now just to breathe into what brings you here. Why are you here? And to listen from that place, to make space inside of you to really listen from that place so it might be fed and nourished today. I'm going to bring you a quote. This is one of my favorite quotes to start with. It's by a spitfire of a teacher, Rebecca Solnit. We think we tell stories. We think we tell stories, but stories often tell us. They tell us to love or to hate, to see or be seen. And too often, stories saddle us, ride us, whip us onward, and tell us what to do, and we do it without questioning. The task of learning to be free requires learning to hear those stories, to question those stories, to pause and hear silence, to name them, and then become a storyteller. I love that quote. It's by Rebecca Solnit. And I like to start that because it brings us right to the heart of the journey of what we're going to be doing together today, which is really, what is it to be a sacred storyteller in these times? What is it to be a conscious creator? And a big part of that process is, first of all, we have to understand what is a story. So we're going to do that today. We're going to be like, what is it? You know, we think we know it. Let's get on the same page and let's really look at the multidimensionality of what is a story. We're going to look at the function of a story. What do they do? And then we're going to really examine, who are you as a storyteller? And that's going to be one of the key aspects that we're going to journey into. I'll be talking quite a bit, but I'm also going to ask questions. And when I ask these questions, they're real questions. I'm truly, truly asking. And I love it when you bring your voice, when you bring your perspective into the conversation, because it really enriches our collective conversation. So I just want you to know that you really contribute something. And so I'll tell you a little bit about who I am and what brought me here to you. And what I would say is, I learned about story originally through imagination. I had the great gift of being raised on a farm in Vermont at a time when they would just like open the door and tell you to go do your thing, go be a kid, wander by the rivers and find bones under the rocks and come back for dinner. And so I got a lot of time. I was given space and time to really get to know my imagination and to play and to make up lots of stories and be in that way. I got to know story as a savior when I started moving from town to town. My family separated when I was very young and they moved to different states. And so I would move between them and I was always the new kid in town, like until I was in high school. And I don't know if anyone else has gotten to be the new kid in school, if you guys have had that experience. It sucks. I'm just going to tell you right now. And so what it is to know what it is to be other, to be separate, not to be on the outside. And stories always brought me back to be on the inside. Stories always gave me a place of belonging, and they always brought me into this place of learning and teaching. So they were both this form of escapism. They were a form of connection, and they were a form of belonging. And they really rescued me at a time. I learned about the responsibility of storytelling when I was 16 years old. And because writing had been this place of respite, it was a place where I was really discovering myself, as a place of creativity and joy and play. When my best friend committed suicide, it was the place that I went because it was my closest place to finding a home when everything was lost and the roots of life had been disconnected. And I wrote my way into making sense of something that is not understandable in terms of suicide. And I ended up writing a play, and I submitted it to a young playwriting festival, and it won a spot in that festival, and I got to see it up on the stage. And that's when I learned the responsibility of storytelling, because in that way, I learned that what you put out comes back. What you put out comes back. And so as I shared my grief, as I shared my wonders, I shared my trying to make sense and find understanding, I then became a conduit for others who had experienced suicide to come and share their grief and their confusion and their desire to make understanding. I learned the business of storytelling and the craft of storytelling through studying professionally all through high school. I was invited into a professional theater company, which is how I ended up involved with that playwriting festival. I went on skipped college. I was really lucky. My parents said, don't waste your time and our money going to college if all you want to do is go to acting. If all you want to do is study acting, go get yourself into a great acting school in New York City. And so I did, and I got to study with Sandy Meisner in his last school at Neighborhood Playhouse, in his last class that he ever taught. He was very old at that point. And I really got to understand, I had to work off Broadway. I had a lot of experience of working in the profession with absolute masters of the craft at a very young age. And through that experience, I eventually came to, at a very young age, that business, the business of theater was not for me. I was not designed for it. I also didn't want to spend my life speaking other people's words. So I went off to college, and I went to an extraordinary school called Prescott College, where I got to weave together my absolute passions of wilderness, of the environment, environmental protection, and the creative arts. And it was that time in the wilderness where I really began to find the true seeds of storytelling. Because we would come into this place where every night we would sit around a fire and we would talk story. And in that place, we were also doing initiatory work for young youth at risk. So I started to work as a wilderness guide with youth at risk. We found that one of the most powerful ways to bring people through the journey of their lives, even when they're just 15 or 16, and to make sense of the good, the bad, and the ugly, was for them to have a place to tell their story and to be heard and to be witnessed and to not be interrupted and just purely be listened to. So not only could they hear themselves, because that's one of the most amazing things that happens when you talk story, you can hear yourself, you can feel the truth or the lie in your own bones, but they could also be seen and understood by others. I came to understanding the complexity of storytelling when, after I got a master's in social work, I went on to find my own true love of weaving it all together. I started working for Al Gore's television network and produced and hosted the Green Channel for him. So I really wanted to tell stories in a global way to help get us an awareness around the climate conversation. And I learned that facts and information don't make stories. I learned that good, well-intentioned people can be very dangerous if they don't actually understand what a story does and humans' original relationship with it and what it can and how it can impact our consciousness. And I began to understand the mechanics of our news world and how it works and how it operates. And I got to work on some big projects with the UN climate talks, and I got to see what people were actually watching. And people weren't watching our brilliant programming on climate science and politics and all that. They were watching the dancing penguins from 350. They were listening to Roz Savage talk about her journey of solo rowing across the oceans of our planets, to raise awareness about plastics. And all of a sudden that absolutely liberated me to come into the truth of where my genius lives. And I want to just talk about that, because that's not like me being egoic about, oh, I'm so genius. That's not what I'm saying at all. In Rome, on your birthday, in ancient Rome, on your birthday, they didn't celebrate you for being born. They celebrated the genius that lives in you. Okay. So it's like each and every one of us has a genius that if we can have the capacity to listen And if we're lucky enough to live in an environment of community and people where we get to have a way to practice and have a place to discover it and bring it into the world, then we get to live with our genius. And I really wanted to live with a genius because it's so much fun. It's that place where it's just like easy and joyful to be an expression. You have something to give and people want it. It's just fun. And so I was really in that great big prayer of like, just show me how do I get to live with that genius and be of service to these times. Long story short, I took that prayer to the ocean. I sat and I listened for a long time. And I wasn't given the great new big business idea, which I thought I was going to be given. I was given a story to carry. And I've been carrying that story for over a decade and learning how to tell it. And it was in learning to know that story and learning to get very quiet and to understand what, is very understood in Maori culture, that stories come from the land. They come from somewhere. Stories come from the land. All of our original stories, our origin stories, our creation stories are all there to teach us how to live with this earth. And so as I started really beginning to listen for this story, it opened the doors into almost a mystic practice of understanding story as a gateway to the divine and as a tool for healing. But more than anything, when you fully come into story almost as a mystery school, it actually gives you every tool and every way to practice how to be a human. I would say almost in its greatest expression, because it not only teaches you how to relate to other humans, because you have to be able to listen. Every true storyteller is a listener first. But it also teaches you how to truly connect, because in order for a story to be caught, the storyteller must be connected to the listeners. And it also reveals the truth in any giving and receiving relationship and the energy of reciprocation. And the thing about reciprocation, the power, the mysteries of reciprocation, is that the power is not in the giving. The power is held in the receiving. And so it's the listener who actually holds the power in any experience of storytelling. I want you to really understand that and to hold that, because we're being asked to carry a lot of stories right now. And they come through news and information, they come through media, they come through marketing, they come through our families, they come through all different kinds of ways. And for you to understand that, this consciousness is an extraordinary garden. And we can grow anything in it. It's wild. It's so unexplainable. We can explore space, but nobody really understands imagination. We'll leave the planet, but we can't even understand the thing that, it's that gives us the capacity to create the mechanisms to go there. It is truly one of the greatest last frontiers. And story gives us an avenue and an opportunity to explore that frontier. And it is truly limitless. So let's go on a little journey. Once upon a time, in a land not so far away, and not so long ago, there was a very, 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 very tall woman. She was so tall that her feet rested in the very core of this planet. And they rested in that fire as the fire came up through her feet, up through her knees, which were in the middle earth, straight up through the very groin of her belly, which met the top of where the earth and the water kissed, and there the air came to the land and kissed it softly. Her belly grew. Her belly button was at the very top of the very highest sequoia tree. Her arms reached out and could gather the clouds. And her head was in the stars. They say her eyes were made of planets. Okay. How many of you could see that woman? Okay. So we created, thank you for your hands and for your yeses, we created something together. Have any of you heard of the very tall woman whose earth, who connects the core of the earth to the planets of the stars? You haven't met her yet, so we just together, and that's the thing, together, we co-created this being who we'd never met. We traveled from the depths of the earth to the outer edges of the universe. We found a being that connected all of them together. We location traveled, we time traveled, we reality bent. We did all of these things with nothing but our ears and a mouth and a heartbeat. And so this is one of those things where we're fighting so hard for these technologies to transport us and to give us these opportunities to experience new realities and new worlds. But we've always had the technology to do that just through our sheer beingness of being human. And so to really understand the true power of what we are as creators, I want to bring you into some of the most ancient wisdom that is among us. And it comes from everywhere. Listen to this. The Hawaiians believe that words are so powerful that they can raise enough energy to slow the world or set it into motion. That words can raise enough energy to slow the world or to set it into motion. The Sicilians believe that words poke holes in the universe. I always think about that when I get a little miffy or a little angry and I can feel my temperature rising. And I think, oh, be careful what you say, because it will always stay there. It can never be taken back, maybe repair, but words always, once they're spoken, will live there forever. Australians say that the stories of the past must be sung to the present in order for the future to exist. The Maoris say that the words don't describe a thing, they are the thing. In Japan, there's a word called kotodama. It means word spirit. And it refers to the original divine spirit of a word. And that it's talking about before a word even enters the world of thought waves, there's a life form to it. And that words have the power to create. One of our oldest words on the planet comes from Aromatic mysticism. I create as I speak. Abracadabra. And all the ancient religions agree that the world was sung, spoken, and chanted into existence. I'm going to repeat that again because it's pretty mind-blowing when you really think about the power of who we are as humans. That all the ancient religions agree that the world was sung, spoken, and chanted into existence. So as you think about that, really consider all the different stories that are coming at you where they're saying that people are bad for the planet, and really question them. I really want to invite you to question these stories, coming back to that original quote. Name the story. Name its creator. Name the land that it comes from. And then you might begin to understand what that story is in service to. So let's rewind a little bit. Before we can even answer that, let's kind of get down to what is a story? What is a story? And this is a real question I'm asking. Please feel free to put it in the chat or to say it out loud. What is it? What is a story?
When I think about story, I think about it as a moment in time that is captured. And It's a moment in time that is captured where you can, through words or even pantomime or video or picture, can bring in this moment of humanity, which I call emotional urgency, and the emotional urgency and the the message or the human connection, to bring in the human connection. To me, what story is it's like, even if you do like fairy tale, it has a beginning, middle, and an end, but it also takes a human journey.
Beautiful. You just said so much. You just said so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Janice. Janice, is that it?
Janice.
Janice. Thank you.
No problem.
So gosh, one of the first things that Janice said was that it's that story captures a moment in time. Listen to the language. Capture. Isn't that great? Same thing. And when we use film, I'm going to shoot a picture. I'm going to take a picture. I'm going to capture that image. There's something that we're saying, and so, yeah, as you spoke, Janice, I was like, right, it's like we're capturing a moment in time. It's like taking a photograph and we're placing it into the structure of story. One thing I'll just note, because you brought up this opportunity, was that a story is captured. We capture it in words and we give it a specific structure that it will then be repeated over and over and over again. Just like a photograph, we're going to look at it and we're going to see the same image over and over, but it tells us a bigger story. The difference between a story and a myth is that a myth is a wild creature. It's not written down. It's only been carried through oral tradition. And in that way, it's wild. And each person, it will live through in a little bit of a different way. As someone who's a storyteller, there's a part of me that always gets a little bit, this is going to sound weird, a little bit sad every time I write a story down, because it's like I'm part wild and feral myself. And so I love these stories that get to be wild and never have to be the same way twice, But anyway, thank you for bringing that in. And right, so myths they're oral and they are never written down, and we usually never know the creator of them. True myths. I'm going to come back in just a second. The other part about stories that you just spoke to is that, right, it's going to take us on a journey. It's not just a big middle, beginning, middle, and end, but a story it's not just facts and information. I have a dear friend, and every day when he tells me what he's done that day, he gives me all the facts and information. We did this, we did this, we did this, we did this. I kind of lose interest very quickly, because it's like the facts and information don't interest me that much. I want to know why. Like, why does it matter that you just told me this? Well, how did it affect you? What is it doing to you? And so stories in their very nature, they're not just facts and information. I love that quote. There can be more truth than fiction. And so if there's something bigger in terms of, it's going to take you somewhere. It's going to take you somewhere. It's going to take you on a journey. But there's something about storytelling that I want to also honor, because every ending, right? There are always going to be endings. And maybe because we don't have a relationship to the grandness of stories, that those endings can seem really scary. But truly, every beginning of every story is growing out of the ashes of another ending of a different story. And as storytellers, we hold that truth inside of us. And the Welsh word of the etymology of storyteller in Welsh has to do with being a guide between the worlds. And so as storytellers, when we understand that every ending only takes us to the next beginning, there's a kind of, that's when we start to hear, and I'm not talking about the next sequel of the war movie, right? I'm talking about, what does it mean to be in a time of climate change, when we're talking about oh my God, the end of times, the end of life as we know it. And there can be all this hysteria, right? Because the facts and information, we know that some things will definitely be shifting and changing, right? But as storytellers, we will always know that every ending, that we cannot have the beginning of the next story until this one ends. And so we have this unique capacity to hold people in the truest, most hopeful, beautiful, soulful way through massive transitions, because we understand that one truth, that we will never get the next beginning until the ending has arrived. And, I teach a lot of storytelling classes. And in one of them, we used to always tell origin stories at the beginning of every single class. And I heard about 50 of them before I started to really hear how many of our origin stories start in the darkness. They're telling us, look, it's all in the language. So many of us were saying, these are dark times. Right? But listen to the language. So many of our creation stories start in the darkness. So, I have a teacher, Stephen Jenkinson, who says, I don't trust storytellers, but I trust stories. In the same ways, he's like, I trust words more than anything. And what I've really come to understand, and I want to invite you into, is that the more you explore the language of our time, the more you can truly understand the greater story. Because words don't lie. They can be manipulated, they can be hijacked, they can be abused. And that's why I really recommend you always kind of pay attention to how it feels when you say a certain story. I was living in the Bay Area for a really long time. And when I would tell people I was a storyteller, they would be like, oh, so you use stories to help entrepreneurs sell their businesses, because that's how they think about it there. By the way, hello to the Golden Gate Bridge behind you. Love her. And I just hated that word. No, I don't do that. And I hated that word use. I didn't like it. And I was trying to get to why. So I went to the etymology dictionary and I started following the trail. And you followed it and followed it and followed it. And I finally followed it back to this one origin of comes back to the word slavery, to enslave. And I was like, wow, it's the distinction between employing something and enslaving something. And no, I don't want to enslave a story to do my bidding, because what would you get? Would you get its genius? No. So pay attention to how we're using these great words. What's another way of looking at story? I just want to do a couple more things. What do you think a story is? What is a story to you? What is a story? We'll take one more of these and we'll keep wandering down this path of storytelling. Okay. So another way, yes. Janice?
Before you move on, it was very interesting about the myth and storytelling. Myths are really, to my understanding, derive some reality, but it's kind of like rationalized. Because it was interesting that I did not know that during the 16th century, or no, what's this? Yeah, the 16th, 17th century in Europe, that you can only get pregnant if you enjoyed it. So if you were raped and you were pregnant, you must have enjoyed it. So you really wasn't raped.
Okay, so you're talking about this was a myth.
Yeah, the myth.
The myth was the only way you could possibly get pregnant is if you enjoyed it. Okay, this is a little bit separate, from what I want to get to, and I just want to speak to that. And I love what you just brought up, right? Because we have these, that I would put that in the urban myth, category, but I think when I think of myths, I think of myths as some of the most ancient stories that were carried, that kind of tell us about our relationship to the earth. They teach us a lot about how to be in relationship to the world. They teach us how the seasons came, like the story of Persephone, what a great, that's a myth, And so, but what you're talking about is that there then become these stories that emerge in our time, and we're looking at them right now. Look at them. Look at all the stories that emerged out of COVID. Some call them conspiracies. Some people don't call them that. It's like what we know is, and again, I'll just look at this through the lens of a storyteller. And how do you determine what are you going to allow to live in your consciousness? To me, it comes down to something very, very simple. Where did that story come from? Where did the story come from? Where on the earth did that story come from? And that simple question can truly help guide you in terms of finding its origin, and in a moment, and like finding its true meaning. And so, and finding what is that story in service to. If you don't know what the storyteller was in service to when they gave their life to that life form, now then it's like, how do you know what you're handling? I think of being a sacred storyteller is having the sacred storytelling goggles. And it's like when you go snorkeling, I love going snorkeling. And if I open my eyes underwater, it's kind of all blurry and I can't see that much. But when I put my sacred storyteller goggles on, when I put my goggles on, all of a sudden I can see clearly. And that's what we're doing in this. It's like, how can you see through the times that we're living in with clarity? And one of them is being able to be a story spotter and understand what a story is. So the only way of looking at what a story is that it's an operating system. It's an operating system that shows you what your beliefs are. It teaches you beliefs, it teaches you values, it teaches you what role you can play in this world, what you should expect. Start thinking about all the television shows that you grew up on. If you watch television, what did you come to expect out of life? What did you come to expect you could expect out of life? What fantasies were placed into your mind? Oh my God, I don't know about you guys, but I had to do some serious clearing out of my consciousness when I started coming into the relationship of love and romance from all the 80s, romance movies and all the Walt Disney stuff. It's like I really had to, get real about what is this thing and not be stuck in a fantasy. So I really invite you to start thinking about what were the stories that started to inform you, that what were the stories that were told around your kitchen table around money and scarcity and fear and abundance and possibility and opportunity. These are all the stories that created us. Now, I was walking through, I live in Topanga Canyon in LA, and I was walking through the canyon, and that's where I get a lot of inspiration. And I swear to God, one day the trees were like, Leah, you got to stop with the whole calling a story an operating system thing. It's garish what you're doing. And I was like, I know, I'm just trying to make a point. The trees were like, you should really just tell them the truth that a story is a library of the soul. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's so true. A story is a library of the soul. And it captures these moments, but it tells the story of not just this one moment in time, but a true story will tell the story of us, of our existence. It's no longer just about me. It's about the collective universal experience. I'm going to have to pause for just 1 second. Hold on. Thank you. I have a new housemate and the laundry machine is right next to here. And it was going to start coming in so loud and I can't think that straight. So, thank you for your willingness to pause with me. So we've got our hands around what is a story. We understand the breadth of it. We understand that it's bigger than just us. But now let's get into what is a sacred story. This is a class on sacred storytelling. I wasn't going to come here and teach you the 6 bullet points for how to write a story. I think of that as creating a clone. Okay, and we'll get to that in just a second. But we're talking about what is a sacred story? What makes it sacred? And I just want to say that I'm seeing some comments over here. Right, I love that, Sandra, that you were taught that if something's going to be a story, something must change. Okay, so we understand that it's like that there are certain rules in stories, something will shift. Stories are transformation, says Jim. Yes. Okay. Now, but what makes it sacred? What makes a story sacred? There's an aha moment, says Janice. Okay. So there's something in you that comes alive. That's what I think of an aha moment. I'm like, whoo, wow, I hadn't ever thought of that. So there's an aliveness that comes in there. What else makes it a story sacred? There's a universal truth. Right. That word true, I love it, the word true. It's so complicated. Don't we know that it's so complicated, especially if you're in a really heated discussion with someone like, my truth is this and my truth is that, and you're both right. And it speaks to this, which is kind of great, which is true is a carpentry term. And it means a straight line. That's what true means. And so it means that, whatever I see from here to there, that's true. And that means that we can all do this thing where we're sharing a story together and we all see different aspects on it based on our perspective and what we're able to see. And they're all true. And that's what true is. It's a straight line. So that means that there can be many truths at once. And that's where I think storytelling is so powerful, because it's so big and expansive that you can have many different perspectives live inside of them and feel the wholeness of life. As a storyteller, it gives us such an expansive way, because things don't have to be as black and white, or white is right or wrong. We can be in the wisdom of experience of where things are out of alignment. I'd much rather come into something that's out of alignment than being wrong, because I learn from every misstep if I learn how to tell the story. And if I can tell the story from another perspective of not the person who made that mistake or did that wrong, but as a person who learned from it, now all of a sudden, I'm someone who has something to give to my fellow friends, community, people, right? That makes me valuable. I've learned a thing or two. So stories have this capacity to be gifts and to be given. When they understand the value, the person that's giving them understands that there's value in our life experiences, even the hardest ones, even the ones that hold the most shame. Even those can be transformed. We talked about that. There's this aspect of transformation that happens in stories. So I'm going to offer you this other aspect of what is a sacred story. A sacred story has life inside of it. We're saying, by employing that language of sacred, we're saying, I honor that there's life inside of you, that there's the divine spark inside of you. That means, as a storyteller, the way that I've come to understand it is that I'm in relationship to a divine spark of life. I'm in relationship with a sacred story. That when I'm with a sacred story, it will inform me. It will enliven me. It will guide me. So much so that even when I go in to tell you my story, when it's a real true sacred story and I'm telling it with the intention of a giveaway, as giving it as a gift, it's no longer just my story, it's our story. And now it can start to inform me. It is one of the most beautiful opportunities as a sacred storyteller, where I don't have to be the know-it-all. I don't have to even figure it all out. The story will do the work. What your job is as a sacred storyteller is to be humble. Humble enough to not know all of the breadth of your own story. To allow the story to reveal the places where you had a thing or two to learn, where you began to see someone else's perspective, where you understood how you might do things differently. And now you're beginning to have some real gifts, some real potency, something to give away. I know a sacred story when I feel enlivened, I feel excited, I feel joyful. I feel like a little zhoosh. I want to work out the next morning. I'll quit sugar. I'll quit caffeine. I'll be the best version of myself ever. It's like I get a lot of energy when I get really good sacred stories. There's connection, there's juice, there's energy. I'm enlivened, and great sacred stories can take you to the very edges of the darkest aspects of humanity, and they will bring you back. And that's, again, where that storyteller is the guide. They will always bring you back. So one of the crucial things that sacred stories will have inside of them, even if they're taking you to the darkest places, in order for you to go there, you have to have something critical: beauty. Beauty must be in the story, because that's what feeds the soul. Okay, now there are a lot of other stories among us, and we are surrounded by zombie stories, clone stories. Okay, so you're like, okay, that's sweet and nice. Okay, sure, sacred stories, I feel good, and blah, blah, blah. But a zombie story is a story that is not in service to life. Okay, and so you can feel it pretty much right away. When you might just kind of like fall asleep, or you might, it's like you don't feel very good afterwards. People do kind of suck. Wow, there's so much to be afraid of in the world. Think about how powerful all these, so many of the TV shows, they were talking about the statistics of how many women were harmed in television shows. And the statistics were unbelievably high in terms of how much we were exposed to violence against women, and how that was becoming normalized, and how women should, and what does that do to the women's psyche in terms of feeling like prey in the world and not safe? Those are zombie stories. What are they in service to? So I really want to invite you, as you're deciding what television show you're going to get addicted to next. I don't know if you get addicted to shows, but I do. It's like, I really invite you to really consider what nutrients are you placing in the refrigerator of your consciousness? What seeds will you be planting? What are you nourishing the possibility of your life with, as you take in these stories that are going to be informing you in your waking hours and in your sleeping hours? A zombie story, a really quick example, is Jaws. And Jaws was created by Peter Benchley. It was produced by Steven Spielberg. I'm not going to go into the whole story of it, but I will talk about this one thing, which is that if you don't speak the language of story, that's fine. But the language of story does speak you, and it's your original language, and it's symbol, metaphor, and archetype. And I say that because it's like, you go to France, you're going to learn French. You go to Spain, you're going to learn Spanish. If you go to the land of story, it has its own language that it's speaking, with or without your awareness or consent. And so with Jaws, look at it in context. To understand a story, you have to understand the context of the time that it was born into, what it can and couldn't be said. Could go for a mile on that, but we only have a little bit left of time. And so look at that. I just brought in the scarcity of time story. We can just cancel that. Anyway, so here we are with Jaws. It was created in the 70s. It was Steven Spielberg's third film, and it was filmed in the open ocean. It was the first time that a film had ever been made in the open ocean. What was Steven Spielberg in service to when he made that film? I don't know all the details, but I do know that he really wanted to become a great big director. Steven Spielberg had a real good eye on what would make people look. I could teach a whole entire other class on why we have to watch horror films, why we have to watch all these murder mysteries. There's something that goes into our deep psychology about knowing how to stay alive. Okay, that's a whole other thing. So he understood something that compelled people to make them look. What does the open ocean represent? Consciousness. right? So now we've got this story placed in our consciousness. What happens with the great big jaws? It breaks. The great big prop breaks. So now they can't show the whole thing, or we could be like, oh, look at that silly prop in the ocean, because it's not like they had CGI then. So now we're just seeing a symbol of the shark, right? The shark just becomes a symbol in these little shapes, and it gets deeply embedded into a lot of people's minds as representing the oldest, grandest fears that humans have, which is the fear of death. Okay, so now sharks get woven into, almost an entire planet's, psychology around fear of death. And there becomes this massive fear of sharks, massive fear of sharks, and massive feeling of it being okay to kill them off. More people get killed by coconuts falling off of trees every year than sharks. It just doesn't make the news. Not as exciting, but the statistics are there. And so, more people get killed in car accidents than sharks, but we're not killing off all the cars, so it's like one of the things that when we look at this story is that when Peter Benchley, the creator of that story, realized the devastating impact on our ocean, which would eventually come back to affect us as humans on this earth, he spent the rest of his life trying to undo the damage of that and became a great ocean steward. So I say this as a warning story because it's not that I think that there are bad people out there intentionally telling zombie stories. But I do think that this is a critical moment where we get to really come online as conscious creators and really stand in the truth and the power and the potency of how powerful we are through the way that we use our language and what stories we choose to tell and what stories we choose to put down and put to rest. We're incredibly powerful. I'm going to hand you a little story, and it's the only story that I carry in terms of that isn't mine. I'm when you look at, oh, you know what? I want to do one last thing with you guys before I do this. I want to show you the path of the storyteller. And this is just going to give you some context and some framework for how to think about your journey. Hold on, it's here we go. Okay, so one of the first things as a storyteller is to come in to court the muse. And this courting of the muse is making space to listen. It means when you go for a walk, leave the headphones behind a little bit, let the trees talk to you. It might mean creating an altar where you come, or it might mean having a regular writing practice where you come and you meet at the same time every day. You say, I'm here for you. It's courting that inspiration, making time that you have time to be inspired. There's the path, creating a path to psychic silence. I do an entire course on this called Sanctuary, and it's really about creating a place for you to be able to literally, it's like, just imagine if you're going around grumbling, oh, my housemate this and my brother that and my nanny did this and that person did that, blah, blah, blah. And there's all this noise and upset in your head, right? And then the muse can be right there, just trying to get in, whispering you the next music that's going to bring peace on earth. But you got all this static in your head, right? So part of your job as a sacred storyteller is unwinding all the noise in your head and really giving it a place to come to peace and rest and transformation and healing, so that there's space for you to really get to be in that place of being a creator and a conscious creator. Coming to that place of naming and claiming and removing the barriers. So everybody has them. We all come to our blocks and barriers. I used to think of them as bad and in the way. Now I think of them as like, yes, it's a new threshold, And so these thresholds, it's like what they're doing is like they're saying, look, you can go no further until you cross me. That means you're going to have to get a little bit stronger to jump over me, or you're going to have to get clever to go underneath me, or you're going to have to heal something to dissolve me. But they're telling you something. They're telling you that before you can get to the up level, it's like sort of like Pac-Man. If you guys played Pac-Man, you got to get to the end of this journey, and you've got some work to do. And that is, I think, one of the most potent things we can do as creators is to really meet those barriers head on, because they will give us so much food for fodder for what we're creating. You got to look behind you. You have to know your old stories. You need to know the old stories that you're made from your family, from your culture, from your background, but also the stories of our time, what we're made from, the origin stories of the land. It gives you context. It gives you a foundation and this great big castle to live within. There's this aspect of introspection. You got to know the stories within you. You've got to know your own story, what created you. And then there's this moment of really choosing how you're going to carry your story and who you're going to become. And we'll talk a little bit more of that in just a moment. You're going to get to explore your storyteller archetype. You know, we all have different aspects of who we are as storytellers based on what we're in service to. And so that's one of my questions I would have for you. What are you in service to? What are you really in service to? You know, because what you are in service to will determine what stories you are going to give your precious life a voice to. You know, so if you're not in service to fear and just pulling people apart, perhaps you're not going to repeat those stories that do that. You know, stand in the power of your gift. This is no joke. It sounds kind of easy, but it's really not easy at all. And to truly stand in the power of your gift is to be really, is to know the value of your life. It's an act of love, because it's not easy to stand in the power of your gift, especially in our times. And every time you do that, you give that way of being to everyone who you're talking story with. It is truly a gift. It is truly a gift. Because if they see you doing it, they're like, well, I can do that too. It's just like, it's the gift that keeps on giving. And it's not easy. It's not easy. I shouldn't say that. Cancel that. Maybe it's really easy for you. It's not always easy for everybody. There you go. Develop your skill in craft. I put this in a little bit of a different place. Some people, if you were going to a school, they would put that at the very beginning. I feel like that's a little bit of a broken model. I know that's crazy because we've been using it for a long time, but I feel like so many artists have been destroyed because the way that the educational system around creativity and the arts was, they go in to treat you to teach you craft first and then to allow the spirit in. But so many people get destroyed in that process and they never get to have access to their full genius and the pleasure of it. So in this way, what we're doing is we're coming at it through a little bit of a back door, and we're coming and saying, let us get you in life with your creative life force. Let's build up your creative ego. Let's get that strength and those muscles strong. And let's learn some skill and some technique and some craft, because those are absolutely necessary if you want to take this into a profession. But many of us just want to do it for the pure pleasure of being in it. So now we're coming into journey into the mythos, those original stories. You have to know the original stories, and you have to know how to go to the other dimensions. And now we're talking about that traveling to a new frontier, which I spoke about at the very beginning. And it's really, that's part of the stories. Being a storyteller is being able to be a traveler between the worlds and being able to go to those other worlds, see them, receive them, and bring them back here and tell the story. Another aspect is again, this is being a storyteller, you're going to pick up on this theme that it's an act of generosity. And so you have to listen for what's needed. Listen for what's needed from the people around you, you know, and what is necessary. You know, that will inform what story you give them. That's why I ask people to come on video so I can see you, because I'm responding to your bodies and how you're moving. You're constantly giving me cues, you know. And so we, as storytellers, again, we're listeners first. Now, at some point, you might come to a place where you're like, it's time to change the story. You know, if I had a story of abandonment and abuse and blah, 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 then maybe I don't want to be carrying that story forever, so that I'm always forever in that projection by other people, right? But it didn't change. You know, the traumas of life, it's not like we can just erase them, even though I think there are drugs where they actually try to erase memories, which is just insane. It's like taking our humanity away from us. You know, it's like, no, we can tell the story from a different perspective, and we can stand as this person, that warrior, that person of courage, that person of passion for life, that fought for life and chose life, even though this other thing happened. Now, that's a powerful story. And you've changed it, not through the lie, but for the truth of becoming who you ultimately wanted to be, no matter what life handed you. It's very powerful stories. Okay, then now you're realizing that the natural aspect of that is that it kind of alchemizes. When we change our stories, they alchemize into a very powerful medicine. And then it's kind of obvious now, and then you offer it as your gift. And so what is it to give a story as a gift? Now we will stand in different archetypes as a storyteller. And, sometimes it's nice to know this in your thinking mind. You don't always need to know it, but it's a nice aspect to be like, well, this is the kind of storyteller I'm committing myself to. And you're going to do different things based on the different kind of storyteller you're committing yourself to becoming. So the midwife, I would consider myself a storytelling midwife. I am going out there, I am catching new life and helping it be birthed into being. So I am one of those people that's telling a lot of, I don't know if there's ever such thing as a new story, but I am not carrying that many old stories. So I'm really listening for the new stories of our time and midwifing those into existence. There's the alchemist. This is someone who is working with different aspects of story. I just heard this great, I just love this. My friend Kelly Walden just wrote a book. It's out on the Amazon today. It's in Barnes and Noble. A crisis is a terrible thing to waste. I just got to read the first chapter, and she was retelling the story of Persephone. And she's weaving in this, she's got this really old story, but she's putting it all into modern everyday context. And she was absolutely being an alchemist. She was mixing and matching and bringing it into meaning for our times. There's the healer. I might come in with the intention to bring healing into a situation. And sometimes it's cliche, but there's truth in all cliches where, okay, someone comes in, they're like, give me advice, tell me what to do, right? They're saying, I don't want to be sovereign or do the work of determining my own life. You do it for me. And as a storyteller, as a wisdom keeper, we know that we really can't do that. As much as we think our advice is great, we might instead just give them a story to carry so that they can come to their own truth. Okay. There's the archaeologist who's going to go and find those old stories and bring them to the surface so that they can keep living. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'll show you this. So when you put them together, all of a sudden you start to realize that we have this way of weaving together the path of the storyteller. So ultimately, you're going to have to walk through all these different archetypes and experience them as you journey into this place of really giving your gift as a sacred storyteller. So that is our class for today. I hope you received some things that you can begin to noodle on. I will be teaching a class, and I'm going to tell you about that in just a bit. So if you feel complete with your class, I wish you adieu and be well and bring forward these aspects of sacred storytelling in our times. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more about, you're welcome, Ray. I look forward to working with you soon and playing with you soon. I'm going to tell you about 3 different ways that you can really up your own game in terms of sacred storytelling. And one of them begins tomorrow. And tomorrow we are going to begin a 6-week creative intensive called Speak Your Spark. And this is one of my favorite classes. It is the title course of a program that I teach. And that's how much I love it. And Speak Your Spark is really all about liberating this throat chakra, really getting in there and getting to come to a place where you are able to use your voice for passion, power, and purpose. So this is really, it's like if you're looking at the end of your life and you're looking back and you're being like all the places where you're like, yeah, I did it great. I soared. I lived the life I wanted. I hope that you don't ever have to go to that place where you have to think, God, I really wish I'd spoken up. I really wish I had protected that thing that I really cared about. I really wish I had had the courage to speak about this certain thing in my relationship. I wish I had been able to ask for the things that I really most yearned for. I wish I had known how to say no at the moments when I needed to have clear boundaries and to protect my life force. I wish that I had spoken more for the oceans when I had my voice and opportunity to do so. you know. So this course is really about getting an opportunity to have fun and play, I was just sitting with I have a creative partner right now in a TV show that we're creating, and we were deep in the foundational process of what it is to create it and how much time we need. And we realized something really critical, and I want to bring it to you because it's something that is so easily overlooked, which is that you actually have to build in enough time to play, because playing is where the magic can be. When we make time for play, that's where the creativity, that's where the inspiration comes in. That's where this, like the serendipity and the magic of life all of a sudden can emerge. And so I invite you to give yourself 6 weeks to play at creativity, of using your voice, of being in community. And I'll show you this, and then I'll tell you about also the Bloom Project. So if you're also someone who knows that you want to really start working with your creativity, and you have a creative project that you're really committed to creating, the Bloom Project is for you. So I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to talk about the Bloom Project, which starts next week. And I'll also tell you about a creative retreat in Greece. Okay. I never have this many things going on at once, but it's the beginning of the year and we just launched the whole thing. And so there you go. So this is Speaker Spark, 6-week creative intensive. You will really get to engage with, it's not just any creativity exercise course. You're going to engage with ritual, prayer, ceremony as you activate your life force. And that's what I know storytelling to be. It is the most eros filled expression of life force. It's a full embodied practice. And we're going to get to dive in at this powerful time at the beginning of the year. And we're going to be really looking at and speaking to some hot ticket people who are using their voice in very powerful ways. And so one of the ways that I love to do these classes is to bring in people who will really inspire you. Well, you get to be in your own practice. So this course is part of an 11-part storytelling program. And as I've taught for over 5 years online. I used to teach these long programs. And then I came to, it's just too much online. What's great is you can do 4-week segments and 6-week segments. And you get to focus, and you get that contained time, and you get to work with another small group that will be with you outside of class. So you get that extra accountability. You have someone that's going to witness your journey. You have someone that you can go to immediately if you ever have a block or a barrier, along with me. And you'll be led through this journey of how do you really access your voice? How do you get to practice it? And how do you get to that place of building confidence so that you can really use it with confidence and joy and ease? I'm not going to go too much more into this because, the page does it. We did a lot of work on the page to really tell you what we're going to be doing. What I'll tell you is that there's something that's not on the website that I will tell you right here, which is that we have, you're going to be exposed to actually 5 extra bonus classes. So you get 6 classes with me, where on Tuesdays we meet from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then on Thursdays, I actually do interviews with, as part of my podcast, with these amazing people who are all just super activated and using their voice in the world. And you can participate in these live and be part of these live conversations. And I will tell you, each and every one of these people will rock your socks off. And they're not all up here just because life has been what it has been, and I haven't been able to have the time to put them all up here. But I will tell you that it's one of the people's favorite parts of these classes, is that not only are they doing this work on your own, but you're doing it in collaboration, and also with the support of a lot of people who've gone through whatever blocks and barriers that we all have in this process. And you're just not alone on this journey. In terms of what you receive, there's 6 live interactive classes. It says 1 live interaction, but you'll get 5 other additional classes. And those are live conversations is what they are. You get your own private accountability group. I'll never talk this much ever again in any of our classes, but I do lead you through meditations, through a lot of creativity practice. It's very interactive all through those 2 hours and outside of class. You also get access to our private online platform, which is called Mighty Networks. And you also get a 1 month, we didn't even say this here, but it's one of the benefits. You get a 1 month free membership of our membership program. And the membership program for the School for Sacred Storytelling also gives you access to a library of over 108 hours of additional classes from guest teachers. It gives you access to a weekly writing group, which starts at the end of this month, where it's a free writing class that I will facilitate and other people will come and facilitate, where you get to be heard and witnessed and get a little bit of feedback on what you're creating in this fun, playful space. And it also gives you access to a reading community. And we'll be reading this one book together that's based on the months of the year, and it's based on the wisdom of the 13 grandmothers. And that is that's like a place where just creativity, for the joy of creativity. So you might have just said, wait, I just want that membership program and not the class. And that's actually available to you. You can go to my website and see about that membership. It's $33 a month. And when you come in to Speak Your Spark, you get that as a benefit when you're in that class. And as I mentioned, this class is part of a longer program, and we're coming around to the very end of it, and so there's actually 3 classes left. And so you might just be saying, wait, I just got there. You can come in for the last 3 classes. They're each designed to stand on their own. And so Speak Your Spark, this is the 3rd chakra. Then we're going to go into telling vision stories. It's a 4-week class that's just about telling vision stories. When you sign up for both of them at the same time, you save yourself $100. And then we're also going to be doing, as the grand finale, Cantadora, which is all about carrying old stories. It's the only class that I teach that's all committed to carrying old stories. And so that here you can see the whole semester for all those classes. The link is in my chat box. Are there any questions about that before I go on to show you the Bloom Collective? Just going to see the questions. Hold on. Okay. Will you run the course again later in the year? No. And I'm actually going to stop teaching online in May. So this is the last time that I'll be teaching these courses in person. There'll be other guest teachers coming in to teach other classes, and there'll be some people that will be facilitating my modality. But in terms of me continuously teaching, these are the last courses that I am committed to be teaching online. And I am teaching 2 other things that I will tell you about. But I'm in my own evolution, and that's turning into do more in-person work. And then also some other big projects I'm developing. So I will say I do work one-on-one with people, if that's something that speaks to you. And as I was looking at, I am a creator's creator. I love supporting creators. It's one of my greatest joys. It really is. And when I was thinking about what is the thing that I was really missing at the beginning of my own career is that aspect of really being accountable to my dreams, being accountable to that life force that wants to be living through me. And so I wanted to create something that was extraordinarily accessible and extraordinarily transformational. And it comes from also that I was talking to a lot of my dear friends who are just like pioneering on the edge of these really big, beautiful projects in the world. When I turned to them, I said, hey, do you have anyone praying for you? And I know that word praying can sound loaded. It could also be like, do you have a circle of people that is really giving you their best energy and their best juju and seeing, like really like rooting for your greatness in the world? And there's all different kinds of people, and people, when they see, some people, when they see other people coming into the greatest expression of themselves, they see what they weren't able to do, and the energy gets all convoluted. And I really wanted to create a space that was that was a castle and a sanctuary where creatives could come and where they were surrounded by people who are truly rooting for their greatness to have whatever creative breakthroughs that they're truly desiring. So it's really, this is not just for storytellers or writers, this is for all creatives. And it's really about getting to have an opportunity to bring your vision into fruition while also developing some of the skills and support that you need in order to do that. So again, as I just mentioned, it's really for any kind of creative that has, and what and where you are in your creative career doesn't matter. You could just say, I'm just committed. Committed is the only thing you have to be here. You got to be committed. And you're committed to either your writing practice or creating something or anything. And you want to be held to that commitment. That's it. That's the requirements. The other requirement is that you really have to be able to root for other people's greatness. We meet twice a month. And what happens is, as you come together, and in those 2-hour sessions, you'll be meeting both with your small group. You have a small group that you meet with outside of class, or we're not, these aren't classes. This is something else. And then you'll have time to meet with small groups each month. And in this time, you get extremely focused attention on you and what you're creating, and really getting some support, both in just literally good vibes of people like calling it out, but also like, if there are things that you need, maybe you need a graphic designer, or maybe you need someone to help you with your budget, or maybe you need these different things. This is an opportunity for you to come to a greater network of people and see, if there's opportunities for people to really come in support of what you're doing. You'll be able to kind of, if there's anything that you're working through, if there's a trouble or a blind spot that you're working with, you'll have some focused time where people can really help you. I just mentioned you can ask for what you need. And then in our second monthly session, you're also going to have an opportunity to really kind of work through your, to get to hear from other people who are thriving in their creative careers, and we'll be teaching very specific kinds of skills and techniques that you are needing. And so this is where it's kind of a beautiful mystery, where we haven't booked all of our teachers because I'm waiting to see who's in our first cohort of the Bloom Collective. So based out of who's there, we take a survey as soon as you come in. I can start booking those guest teachers right now based on what are our collective needs. And then there's something that's very unique to this group, and I really want to mention it because when I was really dreaming into this, it's this idea of, if you want to warm yourself by the fire, bring wood. And just as in storytelling, it's based on this aspect of reciprocation. It's based on this constant aspect of giving and receiving. As a storyteller, I'm giving, but I'm also receiving the energy of the listeners. I'm giving, I'm receiving. And so, and it's one of the magics and the aspect of life, and so it's an aspect of this, meaning that even though you're coming because you need something, there's an aspect of being able to give to others in the same process. There's an aspect of service that's built into this, and being of service to others with healthy boundaries. So I just always want to say that, because people are like, what are expected to me? Not too much. But the spirit of really being of service and supporting others is a necessity, and it's what creates that magic. So in terms of, again, what do you get? Accountability groups, you'll get mentorship, and you can work with me one-on-one for much more focused mentorship. And in terms of what makes it special, it's that something, it's accountability, it's meeting regularly, it's being with people who are really holding a certain committed vibe, and people who are committed to you as much as to themselves. And that's a rarity. That's a real rarity. I already told you about the guest teachers. And a big part of it is, when I was looking at this, you got to kill the lone wolf archetype. You just do. As a creative, creation is done in collaboration. It's just the nature of it. You can't make a baby without two people. It's like you can't create without that creative journey of collaboration. And so I really wanted to help people also come in and get that extra juice that we need when we're creating. I'm not going to keep going on this. I'll give you this link. What I will say is that we start on the 28th, I believe, at the end of this month. And you get 12 monthly gatherings live with me. You'll get 11 gatherings with that focused skill building experienced mentor. You get your own private accountability group. You'll have a private online community that will keep you inspired and accountable. We have a fantastic hostess, Bonnie, that will be there to really keep the juice going. and you get encouragement actually to really gather in person, because regional gatherings is really fun. And you'll also get a weekly email that will just keep you motivated and connected, even when we're not meeting. So you'll also get one bonus training for how to facilitate small groups, so that when you're in those small group sessions, you have the skills and tools to lead good groups. And you'll also get my guidebook for how to start the year powerfully, in terms of a review of the last year and making your goals. And then I'll just cut to where the cost of it. It is $44 a month, and it's $44 a year. And that for $444 a year. And if you register and pay all at once, you'll save money. And I'm not seeing that right here, but when you go in and do it, it happens. And sorry, I don't have that numbers right there. But anyway, you get 2 months for free if you pay for the whole year up front. And so I'm just going to put that link in here. Wow, that was a lot of talking. I don't ever really do that much talking in class. Are there any questions? Okay. The one last thing I'll tell you about, and I'm not going to go on and on about this, I would say that if you want to know more about these, just email me and I can send you greater in-depth information on those. And that is, I teach a class on, I'm doing an in-person retreat in Crete in May. And this is an initiation program for women who did not receive their rites of passages, who really feel like there's something missing and they need that experience of coming and crossing a threshold and being held by a guide and being held in a sister of circles and really being able to put certain aspects of their life to rest while really claiming the archetype that they're most wanting to inhabit in this next phase of life. And so we're seeing women come, everything from people who have just from women that didn't get married, from peoples whose births weren't really recognized as being massive rites of passage, and like that passage into motherhood. We're seeing the passage of birth itself and creation, from women that chose not to get married and not to have children, to have that rites of passage acknowledged. And we're seeing people that have dealt with eating disorders and didn't get fully acknowledged, and the healing of that, or have other kinds of healing crises. So if any of this is calling for you, and that is something that that you're interested in working more on, just email me at info@leahlam.com and ask for information on Crete, the initiation. Bloom is on my website, and I'll put the link in again right here for you, JS. And then we're doing a Writing with the Whales retreat in March in Baja. And that is going down to Mexico. We'll be down there for a week, and we'll be going on a journey. I have a co-lead with Michael, and we'll be going and spending time with the gray whales and having writing classes and doing a little bit of journeying through Baja, Mexico. And that is just delight and fun. And again, you can just email info@leahlam.com information on that. Okay, there you go. That's it. Perhaps I'll see some of you tomorrow at Speak Your Spark. And if you have any questions, I'll stay on for a couple more moments, and I'm going to turn off the recording now. Have a wonderful day.